Thank you again for doing this.
Thank
It's an
you
honor
for
and a
having us.
pleasure to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Let's start from, well, I was going to start from the beginning, but how are you feeling?
Considering I'm feeling great, really great. I'm thankful to Almighty God for the operation and the quality of life that it has given me since the operation. So I'm feeling 100% better than I was feeling before the operation, and I'm looking forward to getting stronger and better each passing day by the grace of God.
When you say considering, what do you mean?
Well, before the operation, I was in very bad shape. As you may have heard, I had seed implantation for prostate cancer. We started with 40 seeds, and it seemed to do the job, and then the cancer came back. So they put 180 more, which is 220 radiated seeds, and I went on a world tour right afterwards, but over time the seeds burned into the rectum, burned into the urethra, and there was a communication, a fistula, a hole that communicated the colon with the urethra. And so we had an operation in 2000 that was to patch the fistula. And unfortunately, in 4 months we tested, and it held for a while, and then it broke. And then urine was coming from the anal channel. And so since that time, it's been 7 years now, I've had a problem with urine coming from the wrong place. And finally, I wanted a colonoscopy to make sure that my colon was okay. And they found an ulcer in the area of the rectum. And as long as urine was passing it, it would never heal, which meant that I would have to have another operation. And then it got so deep that what was to come from the colon was coming from the penis, and what was to come from the penis was coming through the anal channel. And so I was in constant pain, and I was dying. And it got so bad, some of my naturopath physicians told me they didn't want me to take the operation because it was horrific, because it was a complete pelvic exoneration where everything in the pelvis would be taken out. And my medical doctor said if I didn't take the operation, I would surely die. So I was, like the Bible says, halting between two opinions. So I went to pray. And I said to God, I said, Father, I am your servant. And whatever, I want you to force me in the direction that you want me to go, that's in harmony with your will. And within 10 hours, I went to the bathroom to push out some of this foreign matter from the penis, and a stitch in the side came, and blood began rushing from the anus. And I lost about 4 units of blood.
Right there in the bathroom?
No, not in the bathroom. I lost maybe a unit or half a unit in the bathroom, but on the way to the hospital. And then in the hospital, I was vomiting, but nothing was coming up, and pushing out blood at the same time. So they had to put the bed in Trendelenburg, which is the head down and the foot up, so that the remaining blood could be in the cavities and in the brain and in the heart, so I could remain alive. So they put me in the ICU, and then I went into what they call afibrillation, where the heartbeat began to beat at 140 to 180 beats per minute. And then my daughter as a nurse, became very concerned, and they called the family around me. And that didn't stop for 13 hours. And then when they stabilized me at last, then they sent me to Northwestern University Hospital from St. Anthony's Hospital in Michigan City, and that's where I remained for 5 weeks. And then I came out 4 weeks after the operation, and then had the speech 6 weeks after the operation.
I'm sitting here and my mouth is agape because we knew that you were sick, but no one knew the details that you're telling now. And I'm flabbergasted because even though, you know, it had been rumored and people were saying, oh, he's close to death, we still didn't know how sick you were. And
I didn't either. My doctors told me that if I didn't get the operation, I was melting down, losing weight constantly and in tremendous pain. But they told me I would die, and I didn't want the operation. But God forced it on me, and I'm so grateful that he did.
Did you ever say during this, why me, God?
Oh,
why
no.
your servant?
Oh, no. Never. Because there's no one who comes to God on an easy road. If he tried Jesus and Muhammad and Moses and the prophets the way he tried them, and they were his most honored servants, then who am I that I should not suffer some misfortune even though I'm a servant of God? That's how you test the fiber of the servant's faith. So when Jesus went to the cross, he never broke his faith with God. He knew that God would deliver him. And I somehow never thought that it was time for me to die, although that I can't say I didn't think it, but I didn't believe that it was my time, though I thought it.
That was my next question. Did you think that you were going to die? Did you reconcile yourself to the fact that maybe this is it for me?
Well, you always are conscious when you get to be 73, in a few months I'll be 74 by the grace of God. You're always concerned about your mortality. So I was trying to set things in place inside the nation in case I passed away. But I never deeply thought that I was going to die. I believed that God was going to deliver me.
When you say set things in place inside the nation, like what? Let's talk about who's your predecessor? Who's going to take over the nation and lead it once you're not the leader, and God forbid that you're gone?
Well, I'm not the leader now. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the leader, and I'm functioning every day on the guidance and the inspiration that he gave me. One of the things that Elijah Muhammad told me, when his teacher, Master Farad Muhammad, was leaving, he pressed in his hand a piece of paper. And when his teacher left, he looked at the paper, and it was the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. If God becomes your shepherd, you don't need a leader. You already have one. So when we sit at the table, a council, the head of the table was, is, and will be the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And all I'm concerned about is whoever sits in the seat, are you infused with the ideas of Muhammad? And will you carry out those ideas? But I don't have a successor, quote unquote, picked. I'll leave that to God, and I think I'll be around a little while. So I'll have time to look at everybody quite well.
Are you looking for a predecessor? Is that an active search of yours?
I think any person in leadership is always concerned about what will be after him. The Quran, which is the book of scripture of the Muslims, asks the question, were you present when death visited Jacob? Of course you weren't present. I wasn't present. But God was present, so he revealed the context of Jacob's death. And he called his sons to his bedside, and he asked them, what will you serve after me? And the sons said, we will serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Once he knew that they were going to follow in his path, he closed his eyes for his eternal sleep. I need to know that this is not the fiefdom of a charismatic brother who knows that he will pass away. I need to know that those around me are infused with the love of Muhammad, the love of his idea, the love of the Quran, and want to see the growth and development of the nation beyond where the minister leaves it. And I believe I have a group like that around me.
Okay, then who?
Oh no, I can't call a name because I'm not locked in on any one name. That's why I put a council together. You know, the Mormons, you have never probably interviewed the leader of the Mormons. Nobody knows who he is, and they may know his name, but he's a part of a group that carry out the principles of the founder of the Mormon Church. I'm hoping that these will carry out the principles that Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan taught. So you won't need any charismatic individual. The group that is leading, infused with those principles, wrapping their lives around those principles, will lead the nation in the proper direction.
Some speculate it's going to be your son.
I can't say that because this is not a father-son thing. It could be, but I won't say that because a son may be your son of the blood, doesn't have to be your son of the spirit. And that's why in the Muslim world, the father gives something to the son, but not in this world, in our world. In our world, it could be a son, but it doesn't have to be a son. I'm fortunate that I have a son infused with the spirit of his father and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad also has a son that's assisting me, that's not only his physical blood, but also born of his father's spirit.
And he is assisting you, because there was a
Yes.
rift, but no more rift.
Oh no, this is another son.
This is someone
And there, of course, there's differences between the imam and myself, but we get along, we're brothers.
You spoke of unity with, between Christians, between Muslims. Did you also mean the imam as well?
Oh, of course. Of course, he sent greetings to the convention that we may be two communities, but we're under one God. That is my brother. We grew up together. We have differences of opinion, but those differences of opinion, by the grace of God, will never cause us to do to each other what we see Shia and Sunni doing to each other in Iraq.
Do you ever see the two groups together?
Yes. Yes, of course.
In one group,
Yes.
one nation.
Yes. Yes. It's only a matter of time. As we are all growing, we're all in school, we're all evolving. And as we evolve, we start doing this. We used to be two parallel lines, but you know, there's such a thing as a monorail. So the two parallel lines will come together eventually.
All right, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but since we're going on this path, you have any regrets with that when it comes to what happened after the death of Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and how the two groups separated? Do you have any regrets when it comes to that or anything?
Well, it's always painful when groups that were one split after the death of a great leader or the passing of a great leader. But people have to follow the drummer that they hear. And I've always heard Elijah Muhammad as the drummer that I wanted to dance to his beat. And if the other beat was not the beat of Elijah, then I couldn't continue in that chorus or in that line. So as I left Imam Warithuddin Muhammad, I never wanted to be in opposition to the point where we fight one another, but I'm in love with the Father, and I believe in the correctness of the Father's vision. And so I decided to try to rebuild the work of the Father, because I didn't believe that a man so great should be written out of history.
You talk about walking to the beat of your own drummer and hearing your own music. You're a musician,
Yes.
right? You gave it up
Yes.
to join the nation.
Yes. The Bible puts it like this. Jesus speaking. If any man would be my disciple, he must first deny himself, pick up his cross, and follow me. Peter was fishing. And when he met Jesus, Jesus told him, leave your net alone. Come follow me, and I'll make you a fisher of men. I was a musician. I drew people. But I drew people from the spirit of entertainment with the beauty of my song or my dance or my violin. But now I have a chance to draw people to the beauty of a word that doesn't entertain but transforms human life. And that's so much greater to me than music. But now God has given me back my music as my life comes near to a close. So I'm working on an album now that hopefully will be released the end of this year.
And that's what I hear. So you're playing violin?
Yes, I'm playing violin. I'm
Are you
singing. I can't dance on the album.
But you can dance on a video. Now feel free to dance for us if you want to.
No, my days of doing that are over.
What are you singing?
I'm singing a song that reflects the course of men's lives, and it comes from the movie Troy. But it really is a takeoff on the life of the Master. When Jesus was about to go, he gave his disciples two things that they should use in remembrance of him. One was the bread and one was the wine. And when Prophet Muhammad left, he gave his followers two things that they should look at in remembrance of him, and in doing so, they would never deviate from his path. One was the Quran, and the other was the way he lived the book. Well, this song from Troy is called Remember Me. And I wanted people to think of their brother. And you always think of persons more when they're gone. I always thought that Luther would be with us, and Luther's gone. And when I hear his name, you know, chills come over. I want to hear more of Luther. James Brown is gone. Bradley is gone. And you know the person, you love the person, but you don't think of the person every day, and then all of a sudden you hear they're gone. Well, Jesus knew he was going. Muhammad knew he was going, but he wanted the followers to remember him. So that song I hope to sing.
What is it? Can you sing it for us?
Oh, no.
Oh, come
No.
What is it called? Remember Me?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to have to find that. Do you know the lyrics?
Yes. The lyrics are, remember, I will always be there as long as you keep me in your remembrance. For I am that bright star that in words gives you light, but it fades into the rising sun. And as long as you can remember the works that I've done, then I will never die. That's not perfectly quoting the words, but that's the sentiment. And that really is about Jesus, because he's called the bright and morning star. And as long as we remember the great ones, the sacrifices that they make, then they live even though their flesh is rotting in the grave.
But Minister, you know what? I would have to put you in that category as well. For someone who people would want to remember. You have to think of yourself that way and the impact you've had on not only the country, but the world.
Well, I would hope that I have done something in life to serve God and to serve my people and to serve humanity that would be remembered. And if it pleases God, when my death puts a period to my testament, then the historians, if I'm worthy, will come and gather the bits and pieces of my life and assign me my place in history if I deserve one. You really don't get your reward while you live. Mm-hmm. Most of our great ones, they died, they had audiences that loved them, but it was after their death that history corrected the wickedness of those who feared them and hated them and gave them a beautiful place in black history and in world history.
So here's your chance. There are a lot of people who have a lot of opinions about you, not all positive. And I'm sure some of them some of the opinions and some of what you've heard probably hurt you deeply. Here's your chance to correct it. What do you think? People say that you're an anti-Semite.
I've never been an anti-Semite. From the depth of my heart, I know that I've never hated the Jewish people. And for me to hate a Jewish person because of their faith tradition would make me less than a Muslim, less than a righteous person, and would make me a bigot and a wicked person. But I am critical of Jewish behavior in relationship to black people or in relationship to the Palestinians. I'm critical of America's behavior, and I'm critical of my own people's behavior, but it doesn't mean I'm anti-American or anti-black or anti-Semitic. But the Jewish people are so very sensitive after the Holocaust. And it seems as though anyone that criticizes from a well-meaning perspective, not out of hate, but out of hope to see change in behavior, change in strategy, change in relationship. Jimmy Carter is no anti-Semite. He wrote a book hoping to contribute to the dialogue in America concerning the suffering of the Palestinian people, yet he was called an anti-Semite. And that is wrong, and that is what produces more and more dislike of those voices in the Jewish community who cry wolf every time somebody says something that's critical.
Can you understand the words, though, why they might sting some people, the words that you say about Jewish people or that have been...
I have never said words about the Jewish religion or about the Jewish people that I can't defend with truth. That's why dialogue is so important. I have been waiting for a dialogue for 20, I think maybe 25 years now. From 1984, 22 years.
From whom?
From the Jewish people. I've sat with rabbis that visited me in my home. I visited with them in their homes. But the things that they ask of me are not things that I can do. You want me to apologize, but you don't want to face me in a dialogue and show me where I'm wrong. I'm not a proud man. If you show me where I'm wrong, I'll go before the world where I made a statement and not only apologize, but I will seek your forgiveness in a repentant spirit. That's better than what America has done. That's better than what Jewish people have done. In their part in the horror of the transatlantic slave trade, we've never gotten an apology. We've never gotten an apology from the United States government. Nobody wants to apologize to black people and repent of their action and do something in atonement. And when the government even tries something like affirmative action, it gets such a backlash from the white community. Oh, you're favoring them, but you've set a whole people at naught. Now what do you want to do to make up for the wrong of 400 years of injustice that have left us in a savage state. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that a savage is a person that has lost the knowledge of self and is living the life of a beast. And when you look in the black community and you look at the black on black crime, you look at the hatred exhibited by black people for their own people, something that never existed even in the cruelest days of slavery. Something has been done to us that must be repaired. And that's the work of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and that's my work. It's a work of repair. And the Jewish people can be such a great help in that effort if they would remember, yes, you had a part in our degradation. Why not have a part in our uplift? Why not work together with those who want to repair the damage? It's so much better if we work together.
Are you sure you're sick? your voice is ringing in this room and it's vibrating. So I don't think you're ill.
Well, that's my passion.
That's your passion. I can feel the passion. It's coming off of you. So what would you have people do? You said dialogue. You feel that you have been misunderstood. Am I hearing you correctly?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, there are those who have a vested interest in coloring me this way. They raise money off of me. This is a vile anti-Semite. He's anti-white. He's anti-American. He's anti-gay. But when you come in my presence, when they come in my presence, you can't feel any spirit of hatred emanating from my heart, but my words of correction, my words of rebuke, my words of exhortation, my words of condemnation of a nation that has done us wrong. That doesn't mean I don't love the country in which I was born, but I want to see change for the better of America, change for the better for my people.
Do you ever think, though, you know what, I could have said that a different way. Maybe I didn't say that in a way that people would understand it or could absorb it. Yes,
of course. I could have said it in a much better way. But when I came to national and international public attention, I was in a battle. People were calling me the new black Hitler. I have never pulled or plucked one hair from the eyebrow of a Jewish person. I trade with Jewish stores right now. If I can't find something that is halal, I go to the kosher store to buy the food. So please, if I were anti-Semitic, if I hated the Jewish people, I would organize boycotts against their businesses. You wouldn't see a Muslim putting a swastika on a Jewish synagogue because our Quran forbids us and even advises us if we see someone doing that to a church or a synagogue or a cloister, that we should stop them from doing such.
I didn't plan at all to get to even bring this up, but since we're talking about it, and I don't want this to drag on. But you say you could have said it. You could have said things better, but times were different. It was a different time.
Exactly. You know, I don't know whether you're married, but if you're not, if you have a lady friend, sometimes you might get in an argument, and in the heat of the argument, you're speaking the truth that you believe, but the passion that comes in the heat of argument can sometimes distort the beauty of what you're trying to say to get that person to change some behavior that is ill-affecting you. So here I am now, 22 years later, I'm not locked in the heat of somebody calling me an anti-Semite, a black Hitler, and then members of the Jewish community, when I spoke in Los Angeles, when I spoke in New York, marching around Madison Square Garden. Who do you want? Farrakhan. How do you want him? Dead. How should I respond to that? Well, I'm a warrior. You can bring that out of me right now. If you go the wrong way with me, I'm still a warrior. Mm-hmm. I'm a warrior for truth and I'm a warrior for justice, but I'm not as passionate because the climate now is not the same as it was in 83 and 84 when Jesse Jackson threatened the status quo in terms of the Palestinian Jewish relationship within the black community when he wanted to be president.
How might you say that this day if you had to re-say it?
You know, there's a saying in the Bible that the real Jew is not the Jew with a circumcised male instrument. The real Jew is the person with a heart that is circumcised. And if you look at the male instrument and cut away the flesh, you can wash it easily. Disease doesn't set up in it. So it was advised in the Jewish law and in the Muslim law that the male child should be circumcised. Well, what about the circumcision of the heart? If the heart is diseased with hatred, if the heart is diseased with bigotry, if the heart is diseased with racism, even a pure word coming through a heart like that will get contaminated by the bitterness of the moment. My words were contaminated by the bitterness of that moment of hostility while I was defending myself against charges that were false then and are false now. But now you meet me in a state of peace. A man that just came back from death's door.
So as that
and
man,
Jewish people prayed for me. Rabbis prayed for me. So how then could I come out of an experience like that, where Hindus prayed, Buddhists prayed, Jews prayed, Muslims prayed, Christians, the prayer warriors in the church, went to work to see that God would bring me back. They fasted, they prayed. How could I come out of an experience like that and not feel a commitment to those who prayed for me? So the message of Jesus, though nationalistic in its inception, became universal in its application. The same with the prophet. It's the same with Louis Farrakhan. I started specifically with black people, and that is my focus. But there's no way, coming out of the experience that I have just come through, that my message should be anything but a universal message that touches black, brown, red, yellow, and white, people of all religious faiths, all ethnicities, all racial identities, with truth, coming from a heart of love, mercy, and compassion.
is there anything you're sorry for when it comes to that whole issue?
The only thing I'm sorry for is the way it was taken and the way it was abused. And no matter how often I defended my statement and corrected the view, today, 22 years later, Farrakhan, all these nice things, oh, but he's the man that called Hitler great. And they don't say what I actually said. He called Judaism a gutter religion. They don't say what I actually said. And no matter how I try to correct it, they keep on saying the same old thing. It's a lie that keeps building and building because I don't have control of the media. They do. And so you make Farrakhan a bad fella, but I'm coming out of jail.
I actually read the entire quote of what you said, and I think what you're referring to was Hitler's army and the way he pulled Germany up, and not, you said what he did to the Jews was awful.
It was wicked.
Yes.
And I said, don't compare me with your wicked killers. I've been over the Nation of Islam now for 30 years. You don't have any record of the minister beating somebody, having his brothers that love him go out and hurt somebody, black, white, or in between. That's not our way. And I would hope that that can be corrected. And any Jewish person listening to this, I am anxious to sit with you, to dialogue with you. And if you can show me where I'm wrong, you don't have to ask me to apologize. I'll apologize right then and go before the world and beg your forgiveness.
Wow. So, let's talk about your speech. I saw your speech and I said, this man is not sick. He has not been sick. He's been fooling all of us.
Excuse me for laughing. You know, I thought about that the other day. I said, people look at me and listen to me, they say that man was faking us out. Because so many people thought that I was going to die. And my best friend, who is my wife, she looked at the blood rushing out of me, and she too thought for a minute, maybe I wouldn't make it. I was truly at death's door. But the doctors, who were like God's angels in the way they did me, and the staff of the doctors, and the nurses and the certified nurses' assistants, they were all like God's angels the way they cared for me at Northwestern University, at St. Anthony's Hospital in Michigan City. I could not have asked for better care. And of course, my daughter, who was with me 24/7. But my doctor said, Minister, I've watched you for 4 weeks since the operation. They said your operation was so complex. The only operation more difficult is a liver transplant. Now, I don't know what it takes to do a liver transplant. The doctor said, I've been looking at you for 4 weeks. And I would never say that the operation was a success, even though, for all practical purposes, it was a great success, but there are always glitches. Mm-hmm. And as a doctor, I'm looking for the glitches. Did he have an infection, a fever? Is there bleeding that we would have to go back in? He said, but I've watched you for 4 weeks, and I don't use this language, but your recovery is nothing short of miraculous. And so when people look at me and say, I wonder, was he faking? Was he really ill? Yes, I really, really was. But to all who are ill, never break your faith with God by whatever name you call him. Because in the final analysis, he's the master of life and death. And if it's not my time, if he doesn't want to bring me in and he wants me to continue to work, then he brought me back. And some are very happy, and unfortunately, some may be a little disappointed that they didn't have a funeral to attend. But tell them, be patient.
Do you think, is this some people are going to say that you are concerned about legacy now, and is this a softer side of the Minister Farrakhan now because of...
No, I don't concern myself with legacy at all. That's vanity. And when people are so concerned about how history will view them, they do things to enhance a legacy. I don't think like that. But I am an evolving human being. I can't remain the same. Nothing in life remains the same. Once a thing becomes stagnant and there is no change going forward, then there's change going backward. Mm-hmm. And this is what's wrong with the educational system in America. It is not evolving to keep pace with the evolving mind of the children. And so the methodology and the psychology is of no value.
But are we seeing a softer, you don't think we're seeing a softer minister after coming out of this, or is it just a more evolved or a different person because you've had this experience?
I am a more evolved individual, but you're seeing a side of me that was always there. But as I said earlier, you caught me. Media caught me in a time of conflict. Nobody goes into a conflict mild-mannered. Clark Kent had to change his suit into Superman before he went into conflict. So the minister had to change his mild-mannered way because he's a warrior. I'm trying to defend myself. I didn't have anybody to defend me, so I tried to defend myself.
All right, in your speech you talked about the war in Iraq.
Yes, I did.
You talked about the president. You say he should be impeached.
Oh, definitely. The president lied to the American people. What is a higher crime? I wouldn't call that a misdemeanor. That's just a high crime. He lied to the American people, and he knew he was lying. They twisted intelligence to make intelligence fit a policy they had already formed. They deceived the Congress so that the Congress would vote to give him the power to go to war. That's a high crime. And our babies, black and brown and Asian and poor white, are dying because of a lie that this man told. And the whole world now that was a friend of America after 9/11 has now turned on America, and even America's friends in Europe are displeased with President Bush and the imperialist policy of the neoconservatives. And so I say, there's a window of opportunity for America now, but we cannot stand 2 more years of this man. This man will throw America deep into Armageddon if he's allowed his way, and the Democrats seem so weak and cowardly to confront this thing. The whole world is watching.
What do you think should happen to him?
I think if you cannot impeach him, and of course to impeach him and to leave Cheney is to leave his boss, or one of those who is then part of the architect of the policy for a new American century, or the project for a new American century, which is the neoconservative policy of an imperialist America. An America that if we think you're an enemy, we don't have to wait until you make an aggressive move. We strike you first. This is madness.
Do you, and I don't want to put words in your mouth because I know it's controversy, but is this comparative to any point in history, what they have done? Can you compare this to any other action that any country has taken against another country?
Well, you know, this democracy is modeled after Rome. But when Rome became an imperial power, they had to choose between being an imperial tyrant or a republic and a democracy. And when you had these wicked kind of rulers, Caligula and others like that, then Rome became tyrannical. Then you need greater and greater military power to enforce your democracy. What America is doing is bringing democracy at the point of a gun. And at the point of a gun, she wants to make another country democratic, but we're losing democracy at home. This is a sickness, and I'm sorry. We need a regime change in America. I said the whole kit and caboodle, excuse that expression. I don't know where I got that one from. But Bush needs to go. Cheney needs to go. Condoleezza Rice needs to go. That whole administration needs to go, and the Democrats have a chance to obey the directive of the people that voted in November for change, and they are weak in doing it, and they'll pay a price in 2008.
Why do you say Armageddon?
Because we're at the door of it. I mean, we're in it now. Armageddon, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us, begins with truth clashing with falsehood. That's what's creating the division. The masses of the people are beginning to rise. And the only thing that makes the masses rise is the presence of truth. And that's why Jesus was hated, not because he just brought a new kingdom. He was hated because the poor heard him gladly. The poor hear Farrakhan. And when the poor listen to Farrakhan, whether they're poor white or poor black, it will produce a change in the way they think. Our government is wrong, and it needs to change. And if it will not change, then we need to get rid of it and put in a government that will guarantee the American people life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness guaranteed by the Constitution.
You're talking about Democrats, one of which who's running for president who lives in your very neighborhood. What do you think of him?
I like him very much. I'm not saying that I'm going to vote for him, but I like him because he's fresh. He doesn't come with a lot of the baggage that those in politics, that have been in politics and been corrupted almost, or not almost, corrupted by it, sold out to the moneyed interests, sold out to the multinational corporations, sold out to the international bankers. So when you look at Bush, you think you're looking at the president. There's another power behind him. When you look at Blair, you think you're looking at the prime minister. There's another power behind him. When you look at Merkel in Germany, you think you're looking at the head of state, but there's another power behind these people. And the powers that are dogging the whole world are the international bankers that finance both sides of a conflict.
Do you think that Barack Obama is the answer to George Bush?
No. I think he's capable of being an answer. But the powers that contend with presidents, I'll go back to President Jimmy Carter. When he was a governor running for the presidency, he saw UFOs. And he said when he became president, he was going to open the file, which is secret, held by the government. When he got in office, we didn't hear any more from him. People say things when they're running because they don't know the powers that really control the house that they're going to live in. And that's why Barack Obama is clean, he's fresh. But the powers are eating at him right now. The powers that want to control him are at him right now. And how can he get to be president unless he raises $100 million? And who of the poor people have $100 million to give him? And who will provide him with the money so he can contend with Mrs. Clinton and her big bank, or Giuliani and McCain and their growing bank? So the people that bankroll you, they're the ones that ultimately call the tune.
So what are you saying?
I'm saying that no matter who sits in the White House, if you don't uproot the structure that corrupts them, you still don't have a president. You have a figurehead. And frankly, that's why I say America needs a regime change. And just like you have to go into the floor when there's pipes underneath it that break and bust, you got to uproot what's under the government of the United States of America, or the American people will never have what the Constitution guarantees.
Do you think Barack Obama can do that?
No, absolutely not. He's a good person, and he's looking at this thing with the beautiful heart, the beautiful eye of a beautiful person. He knows some of the ugliness of politics because he's been in it long enough. But the real wickedness of the face of politics, you're looking right into the face of Satan himself. And Satan doesn't intend to be uprooted by an upstart from Chicago or Miss Clinton from New York. Satan is the boss. This is his world, and he can only be uprooted by the one that is anointed with power to uproot Satan, and that is the Mahdi, or the Christ that comes into the world.
Then who can do it? Who can uproot that?
I just said it.
But you don't.
None of these. These are victims of satanic influence. Religion is controlled by Satan. That's why religion is ineffective. The divisions in the Muslim world, that's satanic. Muslim killing Muslim, Muslim bombing another mosque of a Muslim, if they did, that's un-Islamic. We've become so insane because of injustice that we strap a bomb on ourselves and go kill another human being that didn't bother you, This is madness. And that's why the Mahdi or the Christ must come into the world to clean up religion. Because the church's garment is dirty and it needs washing. The bridegroom is coming and the bride has dirtied her garment with adultery because she's gotten in bed with the world.
So, if that happens through a person, just as Jesus walked the earth, is there a person you think that's on this earth now, or that will come, who can do that, who can uproot the evil?
That's why we say that Allah came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, because we believe that this human being is clothed in the power of the eternal God to set up the kingdom of God on earth.
And there's no one here now that you see has those qualities.
He's here. He's around. That's why the world is in the shape that it's in. That's why you see the clashing, because his aim is to set down every tyrant. And he's called in the Quran Maliki Ya'umiddin. He's master of the law of requital, master of the day of judgment, master of the day of religion. He's a human, but he's in the world to do a job, and the job is being done. The house is being divided. The house is being set up. On one side, not black and white, but on one side wrong and one side right. Which side do we want to be on? Bush is wrong. He must get right. The government is wrong. It must get right. And we in the black community, the black community is living wrong, and it must get right. We have to choose today between two signs, one of life and one of death, and if we make the wrong choice, we get the right answer.
Is there someone
which is death? I'm sorry.
No, you don't have to apologize. So is there someone alive or someone we know of who you'd like to see in the White House? Would you like to see Barack Obama in the White House?
You know, of course I would. But what I'm looking at is a reality. Put him in the White House in these troubled times. He has a good understanding of Islam. He has a good understanding of Christianity. He has a growing understanding of politics. He's so universal in the way he grew, with a black absentee father and a white present mother who nurtured him and gave him the best of education in madrasas or schools in Indonesia. But if you watch the way he went back to his absentee father's home and respected his paternal grandmother and all of his relations on that side, and the way Africa responded to this son of Africa, well, he can't just say, I'm the son of Africa. He's the son of a woman from Kansas. He's got to respect her who nurtured him. He grew up in schools in Asia. What better person to put in the White House, because black and white are at each other. But here's a man from Chicago who got the white vote in southern Illinois. That's no lightweight thing that he did. He's a black man today that can gather the youth, young whites, young blacks, young Hispanics, young Asians. He's a beautiful human being, and I wish the best for him. But I know the powers that are already tugging at the brother. And I know if he ever gets to the White House, he'll understand it better by and by.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. So, is there anything, have you spoken to him?
Yes.
Because I know you guys did the Million Man movement.
Not recently.
Right.
But I have spoken with him, yes.
You did the Million Man movement I think in 95, not 95, in '05 together.
I don't know that Barack Obama was present.
Okay. Let's talk about the Million Man March in 1995, because I remember watching that and helicopters covering it. Is that one thing you look at as one of your most successful moments, or do you look fondly on that, or is it something that's just sort of, because that made an impact on America?
Of course I look fondly at it. The motivation for it was black men. And the horrible image that was being portrayed by Hollywood of black men. We had the picture Colors. We had the picture Menace to Society. We had these movies, New Jack City, and others. They went all the way around the world. But it showed black men in a low kind of life where we are dragging America down. That's the image that it projected. So that if America decided to move on black men, and in the black community, the violence was getting so terrific that even politicians and mothers were calling for the National Guard to come into the community. If the slaughter of black men took place in that time period, the whole world would not have cried out, because they're only killing a useless population that is dragging the country down. Since then, it's gotten even worse since the Million Man March. Because now, not only is the black man degraded, but the type of videos that we put out with a black woman with a credit card using her hind parts as a stripe for a credit card, and we don't feel any shame for portraying our mother, our sister, our auntie, our grandmother in that kind of light, and then use the B word to describe any woman is an insult. Whether it's done by a white person or a black person, no female who is made in the image and likeness of God should be called after the female side of a dog. But we have been lowered from what God made us into what the world has made us, so the language reflects that now. And the things that we're doing to each other in the community reflect our hatred of self and each other.
I want to get back to that point and talk to you about it, but do you think after the Million Man March, did you hope that there would be some sort of change? Do you look at that as something that didn't happen, a possible failure from the Million Man March?
No. A lot of change came from the Million Man March. But there were those who feel threatened. I asked for 1 million, nearly 2 million men showed up. Well, the standing army of the United States of America is only 2.5 million. So when you look at Farrakhan making a call of 2 million men, and it affected not only black men but black women far beyond the ripple effect of the Million Man March, this man affected homes, not only in America, but around the earth. We can't let that happen. So because I am a Muslim, and 85% of those that came to the march were Christians, it was decided among certain elements of the Christian community that a Muslim should never have that kind of power to call Christians and Christians respond. So they took to the airwaves and they started referring to me in many places as the Antichrist. So when I went around, I heard this. Doors that were open to me before the Million Man March closed because all of a sudden I became a threat. So there are forces that don't want to see the black man rise and the black man free and the black woman uplifted from a degraded state, because there are those who make merchandise of us in the terrible condition that we're in at present.
There were some official estimates that said, oh, it was only 500,000. And you said it's 2 million.
They were unofficial. They passed themselves off as official to limit the crowd, to limit the effectiveness of the man that called it, to make it seem as though it was not what it was. Because if it was what it was, then you have to look at the man that God used to bring a crowd like that. No other black man or white man, for that matter, has been able to do anything like that. So who is Farrakhan? People have to question the magnetism of a man. Who magnetized him? He didn't magnetize himself. Who made him that attractive to black men? That's what made me dangerous to those powers that be, the satanic mind that governs this world. But I'm on Satan's trail by the grace of God. He can't do to me what he's done to others. He won't do to me what he's done to others. That's small-time stuff today.
What do you say? What about the language and the way we're portrayed, or we portray women in the videos? What about the N-word, using the word?
I'm very grateful to Reverend Jesse Jackson for taking the misstep of a well-known comedian to sit us down at a common table and say that that word is unacceptable. We use it all the time. When I was very sick, Reverend Jackson came to the farm where I was, and we did an hour and a half on the N-word. And I said to Reverend Jackson, and I say it now publicly, we can't just charge the rapper with that. I know great pastors who use that language in their private conversations. So we who are in leadership must take the oath that we will not use that degrading term to apply it to our brothers and sisters. That's how bad the language has changed from the 60s. When we were more conscious of our blackness, we never used the N-word. We called each other brother and sister, even though we may not have treated each other so much like a brother or sister. How are you, brother? How are you, sister? But today, yo, dog, what's up with you, dog? Are you a dog? That's an endearing term to a human, to be classified as a dog. Then no wonder you call the woman the B word. If you are the dog, then you are the son of a B word. Oh, God.
Some are saying it's taking the word back, the N-word. We're taking the word back and we're using it the way we want it. We're going to make it a term of endearment.
And you're so stupid to take a word that means your degradation and try to claim that you're using it for some uplifting purpose. If you use it for an uplifting purpose, why is the murder rate so high in the black community? Why are the funeral parlors filled with black men who call each other in? No, 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 no. If you change the language, you change the pattern of a man's thought. So if I call you brother, I soon will want to recognize your flesh of my flesh, blood of my blood, bone of my bone. So if I hurt my brother, I'm hurting myself. But if you're in a gang, you don't see the other gang member as your brother. He's not wearing the right color, not showing the right signs, so kill him.
So you're saying, taking back that word, that hogwash.
You know, you can try to put a pretty face on a gargoyle, but it is what it is. The word is a degrading term, and we who use it in a degrading manner. It's not a love term, because if it were love, the black community would not suffer what it is suffering from black on black violence, black on black crime. And those of us who understand want to see black on black love. And Jesus didn't say, love your end as you love yourself. He said, love your brother as you love yourself, so, or your neighbor. So you need to change the language that our people are using, or we need to change it.
There was a song, James Brown, that said, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. There was no N word in that song, and it was much more powerful than any song I know with that word in it now.
James Brown, great, great, great icon. May God be pleased with him. He came along at a time of black consciousness, where you had leaders now from the civil rights movement, from the black power movement, from the nationalist perspective, and from the religious community developing a black theology. And black was a term of real endearment, and we began to call each other black. James Brown, as a cultural icon, showed the way for artists, because the only way a good idea can have real traction is when a cultural icon takes the idea and transforms it into music and art and theater and books and whatnot. So James Brown took the word black and put a beat to it and said, I'm black and I'm proud. But people were dancing to the beat, but he was driving the theme home. I'm black and I'm proud. And what he did for us as a people, he took the word that was so negatively thought of in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s and the early 50s, but now in the 60s and the 70s, James Brown made it popular to say, I'm black and I'm proud. And that's a tremendous contribution. We need another James Brown to use culture to give a better idea to our people. And we need leaders to stand up in this time period and be like the leaders were in the 60s, the 70s, and the early 80s.
Let's talk about your legacy now. And I know you think it's vanity, but just for a moment, can you be vain while we're sitting here? How would you like people to remember you?
As a person, first of all and foremost, that loved God. I adore him. I am enamored to live in the majesty of his creation. I love the Word of God. And I love the people of God. I would like to be remembered as a person that was dutiful to God in his service of the most abject and fallen of human beings, my black brothers and sisters. I would like to be remembered as a man that was consistent, whom nobody could buy, and nobody could boss except God and his Christ. I refuse to bow down to man. No matter how much power you think you have, I've told my adversaries, as long as I'm with God and I stand on truth, ultimately I will be the winner, living or dead. I would like people to know me better, not just as the quote unquote fire and brimstone man, because that's the way I'm presented by media. I recently recorded with Denise Williams an arrangement by a great artist, Jerry Peters, under the direction of Charles Veal, my violin instructor and conductor and arranger. of the song is from Danny Boy, but the Christians say he looked beyond my faults and he saw my need. That's the way I live my life. I look beyond the faults of our people. I see their need and I try to touch it with a word that would inspire them to rise up and fulfill their needs. When Denise heard me play my violin, she said, "Oh, this is the underbelly of Farrakhan." I didn't understand the term at first, but she talked about a dog, and the outside seems so, you know, strong and whatnot. But when you rub the underbelly, you see the dog react so much differently. This is the softer side of the animal. So she was saying, oh, this is a side of the minister that the world needs to see. And so I'm making an album, and believe it or not, on that album is represented the whole human family. Black and brown, that's Hispanic, Asian, white, Muslim, Christian, Jews, Buddhists. They surround Farrakhan. I want to say with my music what maybe I haven't been able to say with words, but I'm getting there. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us that the Word of God, well, he suggested to me that if you talk harshly to white people about the historical injustice, they feel upset and they dismiss themselves from your presence. Defensive. But if you play music, the white person that loves your music, he'll stay with you to the midnight hour. And when the nightclub closes, if you're having an after set, a jam session, he'll come because he's attracted by the power of music. So I said, I wonder if I could take the Word of God and make it sound in the ear of a Caucasian as music. And I tried it out at the University of Illinois. The black students invited me. I went. I didn't have a quote unquote black message. I had a universal message.
You had the violin.
I didn't have any violin. This was the violin. And then I tried it out in the University of Kansas. 500 black students in a 2,500 seat auditorium, 2,000 whites. And when I came in, the state troopers had to lead me in because some of the students were outside jeering me. He killed Malcolm, he did this, he's no good, he's anti-Semitic, and blah, blah, blah. When I went in and approached the stage, the 500 black students stood up and cheered me. When I finished, the whole 3,000 stood and cheered. And when I walked out the door that they were jeering me coming in, they were cheering me going out. The value of this television is it can make me ugly by the way they photograph me, or it can make me pleasant, just with a camera. The editors, because you know I've given you so much, the editors can cut it in such a way to make the minister look ugly. Because you can make Jesus look bad with a 30-second soundbite. And I've gone in churches and taken words that Jesus said and said, imagine hearing this on the nightly news. Jesus said, you can't be my disciple unless you hate your mother, hate your father, hate your sister, your brother, yea, even your own life. You're not worthy of me. Jesus, the hate teacher, was in Chicago tonight. Jesus said, think not that I come to bring peace, nay, a sword. I come to set the mother-in-law against the daughter-in-law, the son-in-law against the father-in-law. They of a man's household will be his own enemy. This is a very divisive man, this guy, Jesus. Then the man is a berserker. He goes in the temple and he beats up the people that were in the temple. He drives them out. 6 o'clock news. Jesus, that violent one, came into the temple with a stick and drove out people that were just doing business. You can make anybody look bad with a 30-second sound bite. What I'm trying to say, don't do that to your brother. Kind of treat me nice. And you know what? If you really listen to my words and listen to my heart and give this piece what it deserves, the world will open its doors and I can come in and I can help America. You can't talk to Ahmadinejad, but I can. That man is not unreasonable. You can talk to him, America, but you can't bully a man that believes in God. So when you tell him all options are on the table, so what? You throw, you don't know what you're going to get back. You called Iraq a slam dunk, but you missed the basket and you lost the ball.
All right. I told you he's not sick because he's the one doing all the talking. Notice I'm not asking any questions. So let's talk about this because you brought it up. I wasn't going to. How do you respond to people who say that you had something to do with Malcolm X's death?
Oh, brother, I loved Malcolm. I loved him so much that I would have given my life for him because I saw him as the greatest helper of the man that I love most, which is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So when the time came that Brother Malcolm felt he had to leave the nation, and he left, and then criticized the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and castigated him as an immoral man, I felt it my duty to defend my leader and teacher, as did most of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's ministers. And that's why I said I was a party to the creation of the atmosphere that led to his assassination, and the FBI was involved, but they just sat back and watched it play out.
A party with words.
I'm sorry?
You were a party by the words that you spoke?
Yes, or the words that I wrote. But when they quoted me, they never quoted me fully. They quoted the part that would make the minister look like he was a party to the murder of Malcolm. You're a young man. But at the time of Brother Malcolm's assassination, there were 11 daily newspapers in New York City. None of them were sad over Malcolm's assassination. And Farrakhan never was mentioned for 20 years as having anything to do with the assassination of Brother Malcolm. The FBI was there. They know who was involved. The two brothers that said they weren't there, and they weren't there, were charged with it, and they took all kind of lie detector tests that showed that they were innocent. But here's Farrakhan now. I start rising in the 80s. Malcolm dies or is assassinated in the 60s. Up until that time, Farrakhan is not mentioned at all. But the moment that I started to rise and thousands of people began to come out to hear what I had to say, there was no so-called Negro leader on the scene that the media could use against me because my root is deep in the hood, if you pardon that expression. So they had to raise my brother from the grave and then say that I had something to do with Malcolm's murder, though I was never charged. I was never brought to any court. You could set up a grand jury now because there is no such thing as a statute of limitations on murder. You can't bring nothing to prove that Farrakhan had anything to do with the assassination of Brother Malcolm. But you put it out in the media. Why? Because you already labeled me anti-Semitic, anti-white, anti-gay, anti-American. Now all you have to do is to reach deep into the hood, because now you've made a Malcolm an icon. But Malcolm was the #1 anti-Semite when he passed from this earth, according to the ADL. Now all of a sudden, the media that is controlled by members of the Jewish community, and that's not a canard, that's a fact. They bring my brother up from the grave and make him an icon in the world to use him against a living Farrakhan in hopes that a young gangbanger in love with Brother Malcolm would take a gun and murder Farrakhan.
Okay.
I had nothing to do with his murder. I'm just letting you see the context of these things.
I have a few more I want to ask you about. So I'm going to say nothing to do with Malcolm X's death.
No, absolutely not.
I'm going to bring up something. I just want you to, if you can expound on it shortly. Your childhood. What was that like, growing up in the Bronx, or growing up in New York and then moving to Boston?
Well, I didn't stay in New York that long. When I was 2,
You moved.
my mother went back to Bermuda. And so I passed my 3rd birthday in Bermuda, and my 4th birthday was in Boston, Massachusetts, and that's where I grew up.
What I want to know, though, is how did that, are you a different person now than you were? Is there a different you now?
No.
Are you still the same person?
No, if you go back to Boston and meet my teachers in school or my friends, they'll tell you this is the same person, just more mature, more evolved. Many people were seeing things in me that I didn't see in myself as a child. So no, I'm not a changed person in that sense. I'm just evolved into what God had already birthed me into the world to be.
You said you love God.
Absolutely.
And the Word of God. What about your family? Your beautiful wife is sitting here. You've got children.
Without a question, because my wife and my children were sacrificed for this word. And if there's anything in life that I regret, it is the lack of balance. When I became so committed to the struggle of black people, I went away from my family. And my family knew that I was always preaching some word somewhere. And I was not the father that I could have been, maybe that I should have been.
Do you regret that?
Of course I do. But my wife was the mother, the teacher, the guide, the friend that took up for me in my absence and made my children to know that Daddy wasn't out cavorting, Daddy was teaching, Daddy was doing this. So my children, even though they felt something of missing their father, they loved me so much that today you look at my children. There are many children. One person that met my family said, you know, minister, there are many children that love their parents, but they're not loyal to their parents. And what I found in your family is not only love, but a great sense of loyalty.
Do you think Elijah Muhammad would be proud of you and what you've done with the nation?
I hope so. I can't judge myself better than he can judge me. I hope that he would be proud of me and what I've attempted to do in his name. And I would like to hear the words that are written in the scripture. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. As thou hast been faithful over little, I'll make you ruler over much. Enter thou into thy joy. Thank you so much for your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, CNN.
Thank you.